Roger Waters built some of the most ambitious albums in rock history, from The Dark Side of the Moon to The Wall. But when he revealed his own favorite records, the list shocked many fans. Instead of flashy arena rock, his choices were poetic, political, and deeply personal. Each record left an indelible mark on Waters' imagination. These albums explain not only where his creativity came from, but also why Pink Floyd's music felt so much larger than life. So, what albums shaped the man who turned rock into theater, and why do they still matter today? To understand why these albums meant so much to Roger Waters, we first need to look at who he was within Pink Floyd. Born in 1943 in Surrey, England, Waters grew up in a household overshadowed by loss. His father was killed during World War II, an event that haunted him for decades and became a recurring theme in his writing. In the mid-1960s, Pink Floyd was founded by Waters, Syd Barrett, Nick Mason, and Richard Wright. At first, Syd Barrett was the band's creative leader, guiding them with psychedelic experiments. But after Barrett's mental health struggles forced him out, Waters gradually stepped in as the conceptual mastermind. By the early 1970s, his vision dominated the group. Waters didn't see rock music as just entertainment. To him, albums could be novels written in sound. With The Dark Side of the Moon in 1973, Pink Floyd delivered a work that explored time, madness, and greed as a unified story. Wish You Were Here in 1975 mourned both Barrett's decline and the dehumanizing grip of the music industry. Animals in 1977 was a biting political allegory inspired by George Orwell. And then came The Wall in 1979. Part autobiography, part rock opera, part cultural critique. This approach, building albums as complete narratives, made Pink Floyd one of the most unique and influential bands of all time. But Waters didn't invent this idea in a vacuum. He was inspired by artists who proved that records could carry weight, substance, and revolutionary vision. His favorite albums are the blueprint for how he created his own towering works. Roger Waters never hid the fact that Bob Dylan was his greatest inspiration. For him, Dylan's The Freewheelin'. Bob Dylan, released in 1963, changed everything. This wasn't just a collection of folk songs. It was a manifesto. Tracks like Blowin' in the Wind and A Hard Rain's A Gonna Fall transformed popular music into a vessel for protest, for poetry, for truth-telling. Waters once explained, Dylan had the courage to write about things that actually mattered. For a young musician in post-war Britain, hearing Dylan's fearless voice gave Waters permission to take rock beyond love songs and dance tracks. The realization that music could question authority, comment on injustice, and capture the anxieties of a generation would shape Pink Floyd's destiny. Without Dylan, Waters later admitted, Animals or The Wall might never have existed. But Dylan was not his only poetic guide. Leonard Cohen, with his deep baritone and haunting lyrics, offered another dimension. Waters frequently praised Cohen's 1967 debut songs of Leonard Cohen. Where Dylan attacked with fiery urgency, Cohen drew listeners inward, using quiet intimacy and literary craftsmanship. Songs like Suzanne and Sisters of Mercy revealed how restraint and vulnerability could be as powerful as a protest march. For Waters, Dylan and Cohen formed a kind of dual compass. Dylan taught him to rage against injustice, while Cohen taught him to embrace introspection and fragility. Together, they modeled how an artist could balance raw politics with private emotion. When Pink Floyd fans listen to The Wall or his later solo work, Amused to Death, they can hear echoes of both men. Dylan's defiance pulses through the political allegories, while Cohen's introspection lingers in the quiet personal confessions. These two albums weren't just favorites. They were the philosophical cornerstones of Waters' artistry. No list of Roger Waters' favorite albums would be complete without the Beatles. For Waters, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, released in 1967, was a cultural earthquake. It wasn't simply an album, it was proof that rock could be a unified artwork. With its elaborate concept, studio innovations, and seamless flow between tracks, Sgt. Pepper set the stage for albums like The Dark Side of the Moon. Waters later admitted that Pink Floyd's ambition to make records feel like total experiences was sparked by the Beatles' daring experiment. Another record that deeply moved Waters was Van Morrison's Astral Weeks from 1968. Unlike Sgt. Pepper, Astral Weeks was stripped of pop flashiness and commercial intent. Its songs flowed like free-form poetry, blending jazz, folk, and mysticism into something deeply spiritual. Waters admired how Morrison achieved transcendence without spectacle. The album proved that music could reach beyond charts and fame to become a personal, almost sacred journey. And then there was James Brown's Live at the Apollo, recorded in 1962. This record was pure energy, captured on tape, sweat, rhythm, and charisma pressed into vinyl. For Waters, who often wrestled with cerebral concepts and political narratives, James Brown represented the raw opposite, the unfiltered power of performance. He later reflected that the album taught him an essential truth, that no matter how deep the message, the delivery had to connect with audiences on a visceral level. Together, these three records, Sgt. Pepper, Astral Weeks, and Live at the Apollo, completed the map that Dylan and Cohen had started. From the Beatles, Waters learned ambition and artistry. From Morrison, he absorbed the lesson of spiritual vulnerability. From James Brown, he gained respect for the primal electricity of the stage. When combined, the 5 albums form a constellation that defined Waters' creative DNA. They explain why his own music could be at once intellectual and emotional, political and personal, conceptual, yet deeply human. Roger Waters' list of favorite albums reveals far more than just personal taste. It serves as a window into the philosophy that shaped one of rock's most uncompromising visionaries. By holding up Dylan and Cohen as lyrical prophets, Waters aligned himself with artists who dared to confront the human condition with unflinching honesty. Their influence echoes in his insistence that music could not merely entertain. It had to challenge, provoke, and reveal uncomfortable truths. From the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper, he inherited the ambition to turn an album into a cohesive journey, a statement larger than any single track. This blueprint became the foundation of Pink Floyd's groundbreaking works like The Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall, records that still stand as milestones in the history of concept albums. Without Sgt. Pepper, it's difficult to imagine Pink Floyd's music reaching the same scale of artistic daring. Van Morrison's Astral Weeks taught Waters that music could transcend words altogether, that melody, atmosphere, and emotional sincerity could take listeners to places beyond reason. This lesson can be felt in the dreamlike passages of Wish You Were Here or the meditative sequences in his solo projects, where music operates as a form of spiritual exploration. James Brown's Live at the Apollo gave Waters perhaps the most practical lesson: never underestimate the power of performance. For all the heavy concepts and biting social critiques in his work, Waters always knew that connection with an audience was the ultimate test. Passion, rhythm, and stagecraft mattered as much as philosophy. These 5 albums, taken together, shaped not only Waters' career, but the trajectory of Pink Floyd and modern rock itself. They remind us that behind every great innovator is a tapestry of influences, some expected, some surprising. And in Waters' case, they explain how rock music became more than sound. It became a language for rebellion, reflection, and revolution. Thanks for watching. Click here to check another video and make sure to subscribe to our channel.